got you there, our next speaker. And the Minister sadly have to leave us, but as of course I've mentioned to her, we are indeed streaming much of this conference, and therefore we'll have an interesting electronic record. So there's absolutely no escaping any of the sessions that we'll have here, and I think in the plenary side. So let me, without further ado, introduce our next speaker. And we're very privileged indeed to be joined this morning by Professor Sarah Kenderdine. She researches at the forefront of interactive and immersive experiences for museums and galleries. In widely exhibited installation work, she's amalgamated cultural heritage with new media art practice, especially in the realms of interactive cinema, augmented reality, and embodied narrative. She currently holds a position of professor at the University of New South Wales Art and Design and Director of Visualisation for University of New South Wales Cross-Faculty Medical Innovation through Visualisation Product, an expanded perception and interaction centre, known, I believe, as EPIC, so that's easier to say. She directs the Lab for Innovation in Galleries, Libraries, Archivings and Museums, known as iGLAM, and she has indeed, in the last 10 years, produced many exhibitions and installations for museums worldwide. She has many recent awards, including the Council of Humanities, Arts and Social Sciences, or CHAS Prize for Distinctive Work in 2014, the International Council for Museum Award in Australia in 2013, the inaugural Australian Arts in Asia Awards Innovation Award in 2013, and the Tartessos, I think I pronounced it correctly, Prize for 2013 for contributions to virtual archaeology worldwide. It's a very great pleasure to ask Professor Kenderdine to join us and speak to us this morning.
Thank you very much, Nick, and to Viviana. The presentation by the Minister was really quite inspiring. I feel like I might want to move to Queensland. So an organisation of a conference like this is a huge undertaking. So thank you also to all of the program committees and sponsors of an event as large as this, because I know that the community at large really appreciate these meetings. When I drove in from the airport yesterday, I saw at Queensland Museums a big billboard saying medieval power, symbols and splendour. And I thought that this was a really good place to start for my talk on digital cultural archives as immersive, interactive and inhabitable information spaces, deep mapping to data sculpting inside the Omnispatial archive. Struggling with information, both religious and secular in nature, medieval scholars invented charts and diagrams to bestow visual form to abstract concepts. These graphical representations evolved into routine formats for rendering the scientific, philosophical, and theological truths in the form of rota, arc diagrams, trees, and tables. The wheel of life that you see here starts with 4 of 6 vices: miserliness, greed, pride, and negligence. And on the right-hand side, we see a monk falling down to the bottom of the wheel into sloth and laziness. There's none of that here. Mappa Mundi were designed as mini histories, often encompassing both time and space. Here we see the 13th century Ebstorf map of medieval Europe. It was painted on 30 goat skins, which were sewn together, and it's 3.6 meters in diameter. In 1962, Garifeld constructed the vision of cosmology using Hebrew symbols. He asserted that the letters of the Hebrew alphabet could be interpreted from the constellations and that the heavens could be read as if it was a book. Stained glass windows contained layers of encoded meaning in their visual display, played by the diurnal changing of light. These early forms of animation were combined with architectonic space, and taken as a whole, the Gothic cathedral was spatial database systems that supported both navigation and exploration. And whether it's in a cathedral or a Jain temple, throughout the ages and across cultures, we are dealing with spatial information as aids the art of memory. The so-called method of loci or memory palaces maps textual information into physical forms as an aid in narrative recall. This is the Temple of Time, was designed to capitalize on its conceptual representation and to provide memorization schemas. And into the public domain, as we observe through the whole history of optical devices, early museographic forms were all part of the development of architectonic information spaces whose images and relationships excited a public-private curiosity and opened up for everybody into new worlds of knowledge. Stephen Ottoman claimed that the panorama was the first true mass medium, and it repeats itself time and again as a navigable space persistent throughout media history. From the Kaiser panorama to the Sensorama, the emergence of immersive and interactive visualization environments of today represent the greatest challenge to the passive body since the invention of the roller coaster. And while the CEO of Intel, Brian Krasnick, said last year, we're in the midst of a transformation from a world of screens and devices to a world of immersive experiences, he was really just observing hundreds of years of development. These are the Rama forms. The post-processual archaeologist Michael Shanks has called in what he terms Archive 3.0 for new prosthetic architectures for the production and sharing of archival resources, an animated archive. In this animated archive, there's a re-emphasis on personal effect and engagement with cultural memory and on its interface. This is a work by Jeffrey Shaw, media artist. It's from 1995, an early cave work. As you will be aware, projection on the floor and on 3 walls around you. And the puppet's body is used to navigate inside the archive of worlds that are contained there. You close the puppet's eyes and you travel between different places or different data states. The puppet contains potentiometers in all its joints, and so articulating it has an immediate feedback. And art predates many of the more recent scientific undertakings. Inside Archive 3.0, digital imaging has become vital for us to be able to create pictures from the past. Laser scanning, for example, collects billions of points to represent places such as these heads at Mount Rushmore. We can create precious objects in 3D and peer inside to see what was previously unseen. And we can capture art in a way that lets us zoom into the tiniest brushstroke and see more than the naked eye can see. And we have new possibilities for capturing motion over time data that allow us to create 4-dimensional archives of traditional, tangible, and heritage art forms. Here, a Wing Chun sequence from South Chinese martial arts, Kung Fu. And what I'm going to explore is how we take Archive 3.0 and map it to a range of architectonic spaces, creating omnispatial, omnidirectional, interactive places for the exploration of cultural data. These systems support human-to-human as well as human-to-machine interaction, and they are stages for a new cultural imaginary of the tangible and intangible, embodying places, augmenting objects, sculpting cultural data, restaging performances, and deep mapping. We'll begin in the Dongguan Caves of the Gobi Desert in northernmost China. It's the nexus of the Silk Road, and this World Heritage Site has 492 caves carved into this escarpment, which is 1.6 kilometers long. Inside are 45,000 square meters of mural paintings and over 2,500 statues. They are in size and breadth like nothing else in the Chinese Buddhist world. It's a World Heritage Site under the jurisdiction of UNESCO and the Dongguan Academy, and they employ over 600 full-time staff. Many important documents were found there, including the oldest book in the world, the Diamond Sutra, the earliest known depiction of the Chinese constellations. These were all removed from the site and taken out of China by explorer archaeologists. You see a chap called Pelio here inside the library cave reading the manuscripts. These have been distributed across 18 countries. They're being digitized and digitally repatriated under the International Dongguan Project, which runs out of the British Library. The caves are under serious threat from a microclimate change. Rising carbon dioxide and humidity inside the caves means the paint is flaking off the walls. There's a massive digitization effort, including laser scanning and camera array photography. About 60 full-time photographers working at the caves, and they stitch it all together in situ, and it takes 3 months to image a single cave. We took the laser scan from cave 220 and the photographic textures and put them together for the first time to create Pure Land inside the Mogao grottos at Dongguan. It's staged in a 360-degree 3D system. It's 4.5 meters high and over 10 meters wide diameter, and it allows about 30 people a one-to-one scale experience of being inside the cave. It starts with a very simple image browser. We go inside cave 220, simulating what it's like to be there now. So if you do visit Dongguan, you're with a guide, they have an LED torch, and you actually only see fragments of the mural paintings. But a digital cave, of course, is fully navigable. We created a magnifying glass that enables you to examine these very rich mural paintings in great detail. This is the Sutra of the Medicine Buddhas on the north wall of the cave. Recoloring of the mural paintings was undertaken using the pigment studies at Dongguan. So all of these archaeological, scientific archaeological processes inform this. There are over 4,000 musicians in the mural paintings at Dongguan, and we modeled many of the 32 musicians' instruments in this wall painting. We filmed Beijing Academy of Dances in a blue screen studio and reinserted their video back into the virtual world. So a whole range of visualization strategies is really what this started out at, is a $50,000 application. And I'm about to show you how many different things you can do with a single data set. And it's now been seen by over 1 million people. So it's not bad bang for your buck, this one. We have a $2.2 million grant to connect 2 AV systems together between Sydney and Hong Kong, the Collaborative Learning Through Immersion project. And this brings 2 classes together in real time to teach distributed Silk Road studies. We took the wireframe from the laser scan and printed on the walls of an exhibition booth at 1-to-1 scale. And this allows visitors to walk inside the digital model. They're tracked using 16 infrared cameras. It's like a window on the world. It allows visitors to examine these mural paintings in great detail. It's a highly social interface at the core of a museum experience. What we're really after is how you harness socialization rather than distributing everybody onto their own devices. It's multi-generational, young children, middle-aged ladies, grandmother, grandchild. Grandmother abandons the grandchild. And it has a third quality, which is also very observable, and that is virtual tourism. So this is the wife. She grabs her iPad from her handbag and she's filming her husband's experience. There's a permanent installation of this work now in South China, just near Macau. And in this, any member of the public can drive themselves through. They grab the iPad, and through a series of preset buttons, they're able to navigate this virtual world in various ways. Through the democratization of VR, the obligatory head-mounted display version. In this case, we've got the computer in a backpack and the user is being camera tracked. So again, walking around the space at one-to-one scale. This is an installation done at the Autodesk Summit in San Francisco. So the blue carpet is in fact the size of the real cave, but it's more like a trade show environment. And she's walking around. There are two types of tracking going on, one that allows her to see her body in the world and the other one that navigates her inside space in real time. Her kids are there. They've just done this experience. So she'll back away from the wall if it becomes blurry, and that's really if she's reaching the edge of the tracking system in this case. And the fifth type of installation couldn't resist a full dome, World Economic Forum in Dalian. And here, live interpretation under the dome for about 2,000 of the WEF delegates. The Washington Post critic said, at last we have a virtual reality system that is worthy of inclusion in a museum devoted to the real stuff of art. And why that is significant is because what we're dealing with when we're creating these much higher fidelity data sets is a very, very powerful erratic experience. And they can sit alongside objects, but they sit there in their own right. They also, of course, allow people to travel to places that they cannot go in the case of Dongguan. But in general, we're seeing this, the tension of the real and the virtual re-emerge in museums in a way that hasn't been discussed since Walter Benjamin. So traveling from ancient China to historic India, this artwork was originally commissioned for France-India year in 2006. It's a kind of deep mapping or navigational paradigm for places. Hampi is a World Heritage Site and also a monumental World Heritage Precinct, and this artwork recombines 25 square kilometers of this extraordinary terrain in a 3D panoramic imaginary. Uses a rare stereoscopic film camera, which is producing on transparency, 220-degree film, a left and right eye, and these are drum scanned for projection. To create these virtual panoramic worlds. We use ambisonic sound recording for a 3D architecture of sound, and drawing on elements of magical realism in Indian chromolithography. We created a series of animated vignettes which appear inside some of these panoramas. It was the first 3D animation ever done in India, done in Bangalore at Paprika's animation, but also using motion capture for the animations at that time. It's staged in the place system. It has a motorized platform in the middle of a 360-degree screen, and you're able to rotate a field of view in 360 degrees. It's passive stereo, and at that time anyway, and any member of the public is able to take up to 25 or 30 people who are in that space on a serendipitous journey of discovery through the many wonderful locations at Hampi. If you speak into a microphone, you release Sanskrit text into the world. It comes from chapter 13 and 37 of the Ramayana to do with the gathering of the monkeys at Kishkinda. Hampi is said to be Kishkinda, the home of the monkeys. You go inside any one of these panoramas, stereographic panoramas, and some have these embedded animated Hindu gods. The music that you hear is by Dr. L. Subramaniam, who's a Carnatic violin superstar. This work has traveled all over the world, but finally it found its way back to India, and a new museum precinct has been built for that, and a greater exhibition that I designed, but it's right next to the World Heritage Site at Kaladam. It includes dance pavilions and artist residency studios, and the museum, including the 360 system, is built around various forms of the archaeological imaginary of that place. It's been extremely successful, and we're now embarking on the plans for the new State Museum in Bangalore, what I'm still calling Place Karnataka Museum. This is Shwaganabelagola. It's the largest monolithic statue in the world, and this is a festival that's held every 12 years where they pour honey, ghee, oil, ochre, milk, and almonds on the statue. They anoint the statue, the Buddha. And the museum will contain many more elements of intangible heritage, as well as many sites throughout the Karnataka area. Also in India, Look Up Bombay is a work for the Prince of Wales Museum in Mumbai. We recently shot 160 gigapixel spherical panoramas. This is India Gate. You can see the Taj Hotel in the back there. This is the new Terminal 3, the Baljilad Museum. So a whole series of sites, and these will be projected up into the 60-foot dome of the building. This is due for installation in now January this year. 3 floors below, there's a small mirror. So you're oscillating between time and space, rediscovering the city with fresh eyes. And recently in Sydney, on the hemispherical theme, we've just installed Dome Lab. This is an ARC LEAF grant. It's got 15 partners across 11 organisations around Australia, including 3 museums. It's arguably the highest resolution touring full dome in the world, and the highest resolution dome in Australia. So it's just a 6-metre hemisphere, and it focuses on experimental humanities, future museology, spatial aesthetics, and interaction design. And at the moment, we're just opening with 16 movie shows. This includes work by some of the members of this conference, including Paul Burke, and also a series of supercomputing simulations by some of the major planetarium data producers in the world. So if you find yourselves in Sydney before the middle of December, do come over and lie down and look up. We'd be happy to have you there. And we've discovered a whole new genre of science interpretation under the dome that takes place with mirrors and dinner parties. And venues and events have discovered this is a great way to make money. Augmenting collections in various ways. I work for Museum Victoria 1 day a week, and this is a work we did for them in panoramic navigators, as we call them. There are 5 of these on different levels. There's 1,000 stuffed animals, and there are no labels. And so you're panning around inside that space, and when you find what it is you're looking for, you're able to click on the screen, bring up 3D objects and 3D movies of these creatures in the wild. You can download the lot to your phone as well using Bluetooth. And another form of augmentation, this is a section of the 18-meter scroll painting Pacifying of the South China Sea Pirates. Belongs to the Hong Kong Maritime Museum. It's their icon item, and it tells of the bloody encounters between government pirates and government forces and pirates in the late 1800s in the South China Sea. So we scanned this scroll at 1,200 DPI. And this just gave us enough resolution to do what was intended, which was to create a 360-degree animated version of this scroll. So the museum has a permanent installation of this 3D cinema and interactive CMIS open and close to show these animated events. It's a fairly bloody undertaking, actually. There are 20 scenes actually written into the painting, and these CMIS will open and close, and the scroll is rotating. By the time it's blown up for these animated events, very 2D style of animation is what the museum wanted in the style of the painting. The scroll is about 400 meters long at that stage, so every pixel was used to create this work, and it's a 14-minute unfolding of the scroll's narrative. We run LuxLab in Sydney, which is a scanning, ultra-high resolution scanning lab. We recently scanned this wonderful item close to my heart for the State Library of New South Wales, an original etching by Henry Barker for Robert Barker's Panorama in Leicester Square from 1853. We know exactly where it was drawn, so we're able to create an augmented reality viewer where you're the etching is printed on the wall, but you're able to overlay this with a contemporary gigapixel. And on top of that, again, we would have many options for adding urban planning data, heritage architecture, even a literary psychogeography. You couldn't do this with many cities in the world, but you can certainly still do it in Istanbul. Oh, cultural data sculpting. This is about how we take large digital collections, often audiovisual collections, and resculpt them into immersive systems and allow people to do that. The T-Visionarium from 2008 by iCinema Research Centre. 24 hours of free-to-air broadcast television footage was taken offline. It was analyzed by software. Every time there was a camera angle change, there was a cut made in the movie. And on each movie, very idiosyncratic metadata was attached. So the 4 guys were hired. It took 3 weeks to do this. And we're able to stream 500 simultaneous streams of video data of these 4-second clips. And then the visitor is able to operate on this data set. So he clicks on any image, it goes into the database, it brings everything that's most semantically similar to one side, everything that's most dissimilar is behind you. There have been various interfaces to this. This is not a comment on interface design. And here he will bring up a metadata weighting that allows you to refine your search in various ways. In this case, the most obvious for demonstration purposes is color. And by clicking on that fiery red thing, it will go into the database, find all the fiery red stuff, and all the black and white images are behind, or clips are behind. It's actually based on luminosity. It has another feature which allows you to take any clip and add it to any other clip. So you're recombining the narratives, recombinatory narrative, and then you're playing your own movie through. You can also click on any one of those clips and play it from that point in the movie through in a big cycle. So if it's an hour long, you could do that, watch the whole movie, and all the rest of the movies will freeze at that point. And addressing that problem that many museums have, that only a fraction of the collection is on display. At the British Museum, it's 0.4%. The Smithsonian shown here, it's only 2% on display. And at Museum Victoria in Melbourne, it's 0.8%. They've got 16 million objects. So using an export from the content management system, we created a data browser for their AV that they have permanently installed on display there. And this allows visitors to discover 100,000 objects across 18 themes that are all linked together using metadata fields contained in the content management system. So it's a very quick export process, like a 15-minute export process, and then just the building of this framework. We can pour in more data at any point, and we can also use it as a framework for other data sets. It creates a Wordle from the content management description. You can access the original record, and then it draws links from that single image or images of a particular object, which you can zoom into. It draws links out throughout the database. It's distributed by time, and it brings, or species, because it brings together natural sciences, social history, and Indigenous collections. Bringing the online inside is also an interest for us, and we don't do it in real time yet, but we might in the future. This is the online archive of Europeana for World War I. They crowdsource their materials, so they're driving around in Europe. People are coming out of their houses donating their stuff to be digitized, but they go home with their precious objects. And it's a very heterogeneous archive, including posters and letters and diaries and folios and films and government records and 3D objects and medals and war paraphernalia, and a bit of bits of bombs and tanks and stuff. So quite eclectic. Also wonderful propaganda. Fantastic art drawn in the trenches. Prosthetic devices implying the countless limbless, and poignant lost loves and reunions. So they have, it was a phenomenally successful project, and within 6 weeks they had 70,000 objects uploaded. And so the first installation we did of this took the 18 curated objects they wanted to highlight, simply downloaded the material, used the metadata to create a framework to navigate it. It's a $12,000 project. It's actually showing on a 9-meter stereoscopic screen. And once you have launched these key objects, you're really traversing the database of metadata links. It mingles both sides of the war together, which is also quite unexpected. And the overriding narrative that comes out of this work really is one of human tragedy is common to all. And this soundscape is also linked to the images, somewhat emergent, and comes from archives of World War I. We're also very interested in how you deal with intangible heritage. There are a number of strategies we've worked on in the past, and I'm just going to show you a few of these. Currently, we're running a large-scale Kung Fu project, and this is for all the South Chinese Kung Fu lineages. So I'll just turn the audio off if you're happy to read the subtitles. So Hong Kong is I've been living there for the last 4.5 years, and it is a repository for a huge wealth of intangible cultural heritage that is no longer available in China. So a lot of these grand masters are there, and this is an effort to document over 19 styles and over 120 sets in our motion capture studio. And you can just see an element of it here. Motion over time studies, a lot to do with teaching and learning, and the development of a Kung Fu learning center is planned. The remaking of the Confucian Rites is a project between CityU Tsinghua University in Beijing. And this is about reenacting particular rituals. It's, in this case, the Book of Li. So there's a huge amount of research goes into this, and Chinese scholars develop all of the costumes, and all of the actors in the costumes fly down to Hong Kong, and we put them in our studios and film them in all sorts of different ways. So create object movies, we put them in motion capture, and we restage, just in a blank situation like this, some of these rites. So this is the capping ceremony. And these are then heavily annotated. It's a very didactic project, and many of these rites haven't been performed for over 300 years. So there's a lot of archival research at the basis of this. You can see here.
Family members are present. Through a calculation with his set of yarrow herb stalks, the diviner predicts the auspicious date in accordance with the Book of Changes, known in Chinese as the I Ching. After ascertaining the day, the host, usually the young man's father, visits the houses of the guests to invite them to the capping ceremony. This etiquette is called requesting the guests.
We'll leave it at that. This is Wang Dongling. He's an action calligrapher, famous top 10 calligrapher in China. And he at one point painted a banner for the building in Hong Kong. And here we just have a small camera attached to the end of his brush, so the point of view of the brush. It's a hugely physical action. Calligraphy is very, very physical art form. And this is, 30 meter long piece of calligraphy. And recently in Sydney, we built him this, which is so that he can write every character of the Chinese alphabet. So here you have the uncleaned up version on one side and the cleaned up version on the other. And this is so an app can be produced so that you can send your text messages in the calligraphy of a famous Chinese calligrapher. So that's something you'd reserve for your love letters or whatever. And hopefully everyone will get fabulously rich out of this. We're also interested in restaging of performances. So this is Edwin Thumbu. He's Singapore's closest thing to a poet laureate. We filmed him 30 times, 30 different poems in a blue screen studio in stereo. It's in the AV system, so it's he's distributed at 1-to-1 scale around the screen, and using a virtual
for instance, most
microphone, you can cut between the different poems. So again, a recombinatory narrative, a kind of Ollie play.
Pure but beautiful. Drink from the nectaries. You can never know when the erstwhile hidden eye.
You have to wait for the sentence to finish before you move the microphone around.
That's when children scurry to the beach.
And Unmakeable Love, this is a work that reframes the human condition of incarceration and dislocation, which is really quite prevalent in our times. And it's based on the Samuel Beckett piece of prose called The Lost Ones, which describes a community of 200 people incarcerated in a confined space and the resulting existential tension and deprivation of these inhabitants' lives. So the exactitude of this Beckett text was analyzed and coded into software algorithms using basically a games engine, and we were able to recreate every single movement that he describes in his text because his text is so precise. We don't have 200 characters, we have 30 half life-size characters, and it's staged inside the reactor system, which allows you to explore with these virtual torchlights, these half life-size characters going about their world. There's a lot of beating and self-beating that goes on. This text has been analyzed by scholars who talk about Beckett's systematic madness. It was the Lost Ones as a cybernetic machine, a disembodied artificial intelligence. So it was a kind of ripe for this particular treatment. And here the torches, and you can actually see through the hexagonal machine to the person that's situated on the other side. So basically you're looking through this world. We're using infrared cameras in front of each screen to be able to capture the torch users. So not only are you looking at, you are being looked at yourself. So that provides a kind of existential tension in that work, a sort of mixed reality. Moving completely onto a new topic, deep mapping. This is part of an ARC linkage grant we recently got, which is about the spread of Buddhism from South India through Southeast Asia up into China and down into Korea and Japan. And it starts with some of the extraordinary rock-cut caves in India and traces what is now a highly significant political, region and also process underway by the Chinese government for the recreation of the maritime Silk Route. It's a multi-billion-dollar investment by the Chinese government. And the story not only, gives this Silk Route a history, maritime Silk Route a history, it counter positions the overland Silk Road story that we know so well, and where Dongguan is actually situated. So it's a very topical project at the moment. It's staged in a 360-degree screen. Again, there are 4 donated to this project. This is just one of them that we saw before. And it involves over 50 scholars, linguists, Buddhist scholars, and archaeologists spread throughout the South Asian region, uploading data sets to Academia Sinica where the data is stored. And the challenge really is to bring together 3 very distinct data types into a navigable experience for visitors that relates this very fragmentary tale at this stage. So it's we undertake to do mapping of these sites and to create a navigable area. Anytime you see a place of interest, you would be able to go inside that place. So we'll be doing stereographic panoramas, ambisonics at about 30 sites selected throughout the region. This is obviously Borobudur as part of that. And giving visitors a navigable panoramic image on a symbolic map, so moving from the GIS map to a symbolic map. And then augmenting that with the huge amount of heterogeneous archaeological material and linguistic data that we have to support this, this project. So the research challenge is the amalgamation of these 3 very disparate modes of engagement. It's just beginning now. The field work will start next year, and the first installation will be the following year. installations at the Australian National Maritime Museum, Hong Kong Maritime Museum, the Silk Route Maritime Silk Route Museum in South China and Guangdong National Palace Museum in the new National Palace Museum Southern Branch. We hope will also take it. So moving just on to one final project, medical innovation through visualization, and is a new project that we're starting at UNSW, employing integrated design processes and interactive immersive visualization. The UNSW Data to Knowledge through Immersive Visualization and Medical and Mental Health initiative forges new territory in integrated thinking and participation. It's really about how we can use these systems to reframe the visualization or InfoVis paradigms that have been set up for data researchers. A lot of them are over 30 years old, and in some of these machines we're dealing with very, very powerful opportunities to reframe that to be inside your data and to explore it from the inside out. So it's related to a whole range of initiatives that you may be familiar, and also technologies you may be familiar with. The Star Cave, the Six-Sided Cave from San Diego, the Allosphere at UC Santa Barbara, which is a perforated steel sphere inside a perfect anechoic chamber, various large-scale power walls, and this recent image from the Ars Electronica deep space cinema, as they call it. It's an 8K stereo screen. Siemens showing their latest imaging technologies, and of course Cave 2 at originally at Illinois, obviously at Monash, and I believe University of the Sunshine Coast. So this is 80 LCD panels, and we're going to build a new system. It's currently under development and will be ready by March next year. And this is using rear projected video cubes, resolving some of the visualization problems of cross-reflection and stereo. So this will maintain active stereo at 120 million pixels. It's got a 28 PC cluster, infrared camera tracking, the usual stuff, and it's hybrid laser projector. So it has a very long lifespan of about 25 years per unit. We're also putting in an ambisonic speaker array, and this is primarily to do with an increasing interest in how you can use these very, very rich spatial sound environments for mental health applications, and especially in dementia and auditory hallucinations and the same sort of thing. So the creation of embodied and perception simulation environments is also part of this research. It's not all about volumetric data or omics data. It's also about simulation of various mental health distortions and distortion in perception. We'll also situate Dome Lab in the same building for various research projects, a lot to do with imaging in the brain, the Connectome image here. Sorry, that video is cut off. The screen is slightly cut off on that side. And if you do come down to Sydney to see our dome at the moment, we're running a small amount of medical-related material. This is Drew Berry's rhinovirus animation, and if you're familiar with his work, he's really the rock star of medical animation at the moment, located at Weehai in Melbourne. And we're interested in how we can network these big machines together in something I'm calling IBM, the Internet of Big Machines. So we're applying for an Enlighten Your Research grant under, with the help of ARNet, ESNet, and JISC. And this will link up over as high-speed bandwidth as we can get. In various locations, this is different. Some of these big machines. So it will include 3 Cave 2s, We'll probably bring San Diego in as well. We've got Imperial College in London with their Powerwall. And the idea is to work on some of those challenges of real-time collaborative work. We're able to evaluate our experiences using a new tool, and this takes data in real time and aggregates and visualizes it on the internet. So it started with a whole series of work we were doing where people were drawing on their bodies and trying to describe their embodied experience. We were giving them blank bits of paper. Now we do it all on iPad with real-time streaming. These are all drag and drop interfaces. This is to do with personal space. So you're the red ego dot and you're moving all the blue dots around. This is levels of comfort. So I'm very comfortable, I'm less comfortable, I'm very uncomfortable. And various things to do with teaching and learning, and obviously love, hate. You can draw on your body still, but you can also leave audio files, which we mine for a lexicon of experience. And this really is a whole repertoire of delivering quantitative data from a qualitative experience. And it can be done in real time or displayed in real time inside galleries as well as directly on the machines of curators or scientists who may be interested in what's going on in their virtual machines or in their exhibition galleries. And just to end, I'll just start this video running, and if there are any questions, I'm happy to take them. This is a world touring show that we hope will premiere next year, at the end of next year, 2016, at Museum Victoria. It's been modelled into Museum Victoria's touring hall, and it brings together all of our 10 machines with 20 pieces of content. And it's all Asian cultural heritage, and it will tour as a single blockbuster. So I'll just leave that running, and you will see many of the works that we've already seen today, so I don't need to talk through it. In the middle of the room is a digital wayfinding device, and this animation is just used both for evaluation of the public, who are very hungry for this stuff, and also for curators to understand its complexity. So all of the content on the digital wayfinding device would change depending on what was programmed in the machine. Audio is delivered through a rubber lapel with directional speakers embedded in it, which gives very, very directional sound. Means you can talk to your kids, but you're still getting your unique emergent soundscape because all of these systems are interactive. So I look forward to having the opportunity to perhaps take you through some of these systems in our new centre in Sydney, or indeed at Museum Victoria next year. Thank you very much. So if there are any questions, I'm happy to take them.
Are you allowed to use IGN?
I don't know. Sure. So, yeah, so that, just to clarify, they're not videos mostly. They're 3D data sets and virtual world applications. For the video streaming. Oh, for T-Visionarium? Right, so we didn't have to do anything. So a lot of lawyers were consulted on that one as soon as it was shown overseas. And apparently when you push the button that plays the entire movie stream through, right through to the end, you break copyright. But if you're just looking at 4-second clips, it's okay. Yeah, yeah. And as for the copyright and all the other things, there's a whole cascade of agreements in place with World Heritage authorities and in-country stuff, which allows us to do this work. Yeah. Yeah.
This is all very impressive, quite awe-inspiring, really. Can you talk a little bit about the amount of programming effort necessary, the software effort necessary to keep one of these, not just to make it, but to keep it up and running?
Sure. Okay. Well, yeah, definitely. There's a good example is this one, because it's now in India for 3 years. It's never been serviced. I mean, the bulbs have been changed. It hasn't broken down. So it's running, no problem. In just as you see it here. And we check that every now and then, that it really is. The programming effort to make some of these things, they've got a long lineage. And in the early days, we were using software environments that were either fully coded from scratch or using the help of virtuals and sort of military type softwares. And it's exponentially decreasing in terms of complexity and also the number of programmers that are able to work on this kind of stuff and are interested to work on this kind of stuff. There's still real challenges at the resolutions that we're interested in working at, not only in data capture, because, a cluster of GoPros is just not going to do it. So capturing data is also a pretty arcane thing at the moment at the resolution we need, and programming it and playing it back in the fidelity that we want. And the new system that we're building at 120 million pixels in 3D, that should go some way to really demonstrating the real power and capacity of this kind of data. That will have off-the-shelf basic software framework, but a lot of it will be custom coded. Yeah. So if you know any great programmers, let us know. Great.
Thank you. Thank you very much indeed. This is, of course, in the real world, well, as opposed to a virtual one. At least I think that's right. Yeah. So I'd like to, yes, thank you very much indeed. That was a fantastic presentation, and I'd like to really thank you very much, Sarah Field, for coming over and presenting that. And it sounded like a very good invitation to go to Sydney to have a look at some of the facilities and the work you'd. In collaboration, quite right, of course. So thank you very much indeed. I think this will, we're just finishing off now. Now we're at the morning tea break. So remember, of course, to provide feedback in one of those ways, electronic or by paper. As Sarah rightly said at the beginning, I'd like to thank her for saying at the very beginning, we're very grateful indeed to all the sponsors for this conference, because they make it happen, and we're delighted and welcome and to see so many of them in the audience here today. So thank you very much for that. Now we start again at 11 o'clock.